This whole mess in Virginia right now, the top three Democrats embroiled in scandal.
Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax now has a second accuser alleging that he raped her back at Duke.
Do you think any message for the citizens of Virginia?
We'll have our say. Confident in truth.
Democrats were assigned being the protectors of women, that the owners of this issue. It becomes weaponized and partisan.
Democrats seemingly on their own witch hunt, sparring with the acting attorney general about his supervision of the Mueller probe.
Who are you? Where did you come from?
You wouldn't oversee a witch hunt, would you? Chairman, I see that your 5 minutes is up, and so...
Democrats' control of the House may have a major impact on whether or not the government shuts down again in 7 days.
I think it has a lot of work to go forward.
We're pretty close.
Lunatics in the Congress have a brand new plan to destroy our economy. It's called the Green New Deal.
Our planet is in peril, and we need to be bold. It's too expensive. Oh, it's all of this. If we used to govern our dreams that way, we would have never gone to the moon.
But you gotta keep it. We're going to the moon. It was like a Spartacus moment.
It was. I would take us to the moon anyway.
But you know what you need to get to the moon with the rockets? You need fossil fuels.
Like a lot of it.
Did he think about that? Because this new Green Deal, they want to eliminate all that. So you're not going to get back to the moon unless you've got like giant windmills or something.
I told you, though, in the utopia that is the Green New Deal, everybody gets a pair of faux fur wings and we all fly up. That's how it is.
Send us your design. How would you send a rocket to the moon using wind power without fossil fuels?
We want to see that.
No fossil fuels.
We want to see your adaptation to that. In addition, how are you going to ban farting cows? And what are you going to do about airplanes? And
I was waiting how long it would take for you to mention that. It's
farting cows?
The second hour.
Well, we were supposed to do an interview.
You made it pretty far, actually.
I did a whole hour. We're supposed to do an interview with a farmer who's surrounded by cows flatulating. I don't know that we're going to have that, but we're working on it.
You don't
right
want
now.
Cars flatulating, so...
Well, cars flatulate too.
They do.
All right.
We're going to get rid of those too, right? They're all going to be battery powered.
That's right.
In the Green New Deal.
Why don't we start a new thing? Propose a segment with Pete. Friends at FoxNews.com. Cows, cars, whatever you want to do.
What?
Pizza Hut.
Pizza Hut. It's National Pizza Day.
Don't get me started on that. Don't get me started on the pizza because we're going to duke it out.
Pizza belongs in Staten Island, not a Pizza Hut.
That's right.
We'll get to that later.
Yes.
Big news still rotten in Richmond. The top three Democratic elected officials all mired in scandal. You see the two officials there on the left, the governor and the attorney general dealing with blackface scandals, and then the lieutenant governor on the right, Justin Fairfax, now has a second accuser. He already had one accuser alleging that he had committed a sexual assault against her in 2004 at the Democratic National Convention. Now he has a second accuser suggesting assault, potentially rape at Duke University in 2000.
Yeah, what you didn't think could get worse got worse for Democrats in Virginia. And unlike other networks in other situations like Brett Kavanaugh, we will be careful about this. Take seriously the accusations mounted against the lieutenant governor, Justin Fairfax. She accuses that he raped him when they were in college at Duke. At the same time, be serious about the fact that he is denying these charges this morning and says they're not true. This is a statement from the lieutenant governor, Justin Fairfax. He said, "I deny this latest unsubstantiated allegation. It is demonstrably false," which means he thinks he can demonstrate that it's false. "I've never forced myself on anyone ever. I demand a full investigation into these unsubstantiated and false allegations." Part of the problem for him is that many women who knew this woman at the time are saying they were told at the time.
She shared it.
It's been shared, a lot, potentially some there. What will be interesting, Jedediah, is how did Democrats respond to this?
Yeah, it's interesting because they were, very opposed to Kavanaugh, came out strong and firm, and many of them are feeling that they have been given this job of being the allies of the Me Too movement. So now they're being forced to say, for example, Patrick Hope, Democratic delegate from Northern Virginia, saying he will file articles of impeachment if Fairfax doesn't resign. Take a listen.
As the father of 3 young girls, I cannot stand by silently while the lieutenant governor is facing multiple credible allegations of sexual assault. I believe these women. He needs to resign immediately. Should the lieutenant governor fail to do so, on Monday, I intend to introduce articles of impeachment.
So there you have a Democratic state delegate, and maybe he is standing on principle. We still don't know all the facts. This hasn't been investigated and hasn't been substantiated. That does not demean the woman. We should respect both women who have these allegations. But now you have a Democrat going after a fellow Democrat without knowing whether it's true or not, and saying, if you don't resign, I'm going to lead an impeachment effort Monday morning against you. Have Democrats not learned anything from the Kavanaugh situation?
It's because they don't know what to do.
No, they're in a box.
They don't know what to do because they set such a terrible precedent with Kavanaugh of not asking for due process, of not saying, hold on a second, this is a serious matter, it needs to be taken seriously, it needs to be investigated, let's wait and see what we find out. That now they feel like, wait a minute, we have to be compelled if we're going to be allies of this movement.
But it's a half compelling.
We have to respond this way.
To your point, like it's
not quite the same.
No, nowhere. And I said it last hour. I'll probably say it every hour. So sorry about that. It's streets versus tweets. Like if this was a Republican, Democrats would be taking to the streets saying, "You better resign, or you're a racist, or you're a woman hater." In this case, they're tweeting, "Step down, step down." But Ed, as you know, the Washington Post reporting that Virginia Democrats and national Democrats behind the scenes are telling Governor Northam, the Democrat there, saying, "Don't leave.
Because
leave your spot.
We're
saying you should resign, but we don't really mean it."
Next in line, if all three top Democrats resign, next in line is a Republican who is the Speaker of the House. And you know what? Michelle Malkin was on Fox News last night with Mike Emanuel and basically blasted Democrats for always jumping on the bandwagon. Watch.
The left has basically built its own ideological Pandora's box. And I have to say that, you know, I think that there are a lot of us on the right who've seen so many of these tactics, the grievance card played against Republicans and conservatives who are indulging in a bit of schadenfreude now. We have to be very careful about a bandwagon effect now and the timing of some of these accusations. It is true that some of these accusations were apparently covered up by top Democratic officials. But whenever there's political expedience involved, yes, you have to ask the tough questions, and allegations have to be subjected to corroboration.
No, I think she makes a great point, and I think it's really easy to want to jump on this bandwagon when the person in power is someone who's of a different party, or you're waiting to try to. A lot of people sit at home and say, "Let's try to get the Republican in. Let's look at this from that angle." You have to really be consistent about due process and your principles, no matter who's in office, whether it's a Democrat, whether it's a Republican, no matter where you stand. People have a right to due process, and you have to be able to call for an investigation without automatically assuming that that person is guilty on minute one.
We would all want to hope that that standard would be applied to us. Which is, I think, how the lens you have to look through it. If you're accused of this, do you get tried in the court of public opinion or in a real trial? Here's the thing. You look at Kavanaugh. You look at this instance. It goes back to college, right? So it goes back to college and incidents that happened there. Well, an op-ed in the Yale Daily News, one of the Ivy Leagues, has a writer. Her name is Isis Davis Marks. Wrote, I'm just going to read what she wrote. And it applies. You'll see how it applies to what we're talking about right now. She wrote in the Yale Daily News, "When I'm watching the white boy, who is now a white man by this point, on CNN, I'll remember a racist remark that he said, an unintentional utterance that he made when he had one too many at a frat party during sophomore year. I'll recall a message that he accidentally left open on a computer when he forgot to log out of iMessage, where he likened a woman's body to a particularly large animal. I'll kick myself for forgetting to screenshot the evidence. And when I'm watching him smile that smile, I'll think that I could have stopped it." Effectively, she's arguing, listen, this is racism. I will say that. I will find the white boy, and I will do any instance to document the sins that he's committed when he was an idiot in college, so that someday I can use it against him. Where does that end? And how is that not racism? I mean that sincerely. I don't even know what Isis's race is. It doesn't matter.
Advocating spying on a white man in a business situation when they're a grown adult, it's still a little bizarre. I'm going to spy on them and collect all. But to say, as you say, a white boy, which does sound racist, and say basically when they do something stupid in college, when it doesn't excuse what they did in college, but I'm going to then collect it and hold it against them later. It's just downright
It's
bizarre.
also just absurd because, you know, everyone was a kid once and everyone did stupid stuff back in the day. And if you're going to dig through everybody's file and everybody's yearbook and every comment ever
That's
made,
right. You said yearbook.
everyone is going to be
Goes
vulnerable.
back to Kavanaugh, though.
Yeah,
It ties
let's
back.
read the little
that
notes
was where
in
we
his
had the
yearbook.
high school yearbook, not college,
Right,
not the
it's
medical
crazy.
school.
Oh, you're right.
High
Yeah.
school.
To what end, though, is the question. I mean, to what end does this go on where you don't realize that people do grow, people do evolve? That's not to say that all the behavior is justified or it should be excused, but if we're now going to be digging through, and it's not just their passing their yearbooks. Now, in this age, it's their social media, it's their tweets, it's something that you said 30 years ago in a comedy club. It is a scary time to be a human being who does make mistakes and does have to have an opportunity for redemption and for growth.
Yeah, I'd like to invite Isis on our program because this is not a remark. This is an op-ed, which means you sat at a computer and you typed it, which means you thought about it when you typed it.
Yeah.
When I'm watching the white boy, who is now a white man by this point, is that... please come explain.
How
Please
do
tell
you
me
get
more.
away with saying that, too, that type
Well,
of
because there's a double
racial,
standard, of course.
It's horrific.
It's terrible.
Yeah, downright bizarre. It might also explain what was going on Capitol Hill yesterday. The acting attorney general, Matt Whitaker, he's about to leave office, and Bill Barr is expected to be confirmed in the next few days as the new attorney general for the president of the United States. You see him right there being sworn in. And Democrats thought they had him cornered because they wanted to prove somehow, because remember, going back to when he was first appointed by the president, Democrats started this narrative that he was put in place so the president could watch the Mueller investigation, could interfere with the Mueller investigation, and maybe shut down the Mueller investigation. Guess what? None of that happened. The Mueller investigation is still going on. We're still waiting for the report. And as Whitaker testified under oath again and again, he's not interfering with the probe. Watch.
You wouldn't oversee a witch hunt, would you? You'd stop a witch hunt, wouldn't you?
You can spin the Constitution all you want. As you sit here today, you just have to answer.
If you want to ask the chairman for time of your own, you can do it. This is my time.
How the heck did you become the head of the Department of Justice?
I need to have my time restored so that you can behave appropriately.
Have you ever been asked to approve any request or action to be taken by the special counsel?
Mr. Chairman, I see that your 5 minutes is up, and so I'm here voluntarily.
Oh, man. Isn't he the kind of guy that can really infuriate the left, though? I mean, just not taking any of their nonsense, so much political theater. This could have been over in 2 minutes, that of him saying, I didn't interfere in the investigation, I didn't have any conversations with the president or top White House officials with it. The end. That should have been it.
Problem is, he's a college football player from Iowa, so they don't like him. He's white, so they don't like him. And he's been critical. No, listen, this is they play the identity politics game all the time. Listen,
it's not that they don't like him because he's white. That's not
fine. Fair enough.
They don't like him because he works for the president.
I'll take that correction. Okay. Fair enough. But they don't like him because he works for the president, and he's been critical of the Mueller probe. Yeah. And as a result, he's then defending the fact that he didn't interfere with it. They can't take that. They're triggered by that very perspective.
Well, you spoke last hour.
Yeah, Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, Pete spoke to last hour, and she had something to say about this Democrat overreach. Take a listen.
This was just a theatrical show, character assassination, just another way to undermine President Trump. It was really disgusting. I was quite sad, to tell you the truth. They're overreaching, and I think that's going to be good for Republicans in 2020 because they're going so far to the left, so radical, so rude, that I think the American public is going to wake up. I think it's going to backlash on them.
Speaking an interesting truth, because you've got to look beyond this one hearing that you're rightly criticizing, which is the idea that, think about the Democratic efforts to abolish the Electoral College, impeach the president, impeach the blankety blank that we saw the first week. The Democratic overreach might blow up in their face.
Depends, though. I don't know. It makes me nervous. The Democratic base has moved far left, and I'm really curious how this hits independent voters and people in the middle. I think we're going to
There's a lot of overplaying going on.
All right. Up next, Andy McCarthy is going to join us to talk about all these big legal issues.
And 2020 hopeful Cory Booker taking his support for the Green New Deal out of this world.
And there's a lot of people now that are blowing back on the Green Deal. They're like, oh, it's impractical. If we used to govern our dreams that way, we would have never gone to the moon.
Come here. 24/7 Channel 115.
A state of controversy in Virginia as the three top Democratic officials all face scandals. The lieutenant governor now facing 2 accusations of sexual assault, and the attorney general admitted to wearing blackface in college. But it all started at the top when Governor Northam's racist yearbook photo came to light. So we sent our next guest to the state to see what people think of the governor's blackface scandal.
Do you think that a governor should be held accountable for something he did back in college?
That's quite unfair.
I realize it's hated. I realize this is something that was also done as a young person.
Everybody makes mistakes. They have to hold him as accountable as they would hold anyone on the right.
Founder of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, joins us now with more. Charlie, welcome. Now, it's important to note that we sent you yesterday before the second accusation came out against Fairfax. What did you find when you spoke to these people on the street?
Well, look, a lot of the voters of Virginia are still in kind of a state of shell shock. They're stunned with all of these accusations that have been lining up one after the other. And there was one common theme, though. There were many of the voters were agreeing that we should not have a rush to judgment for something that happened 30 years ago. And I actually agree with that. During the Kavanaugh hearings, you know, I was one of the louder voices that was trying to calm down the mob that was trying to go after then Judge Kavanaugh, now Justice Kavanaugh. But there was definitely a consensus that each one of these office holders have done something wrong, something I agree with. But they had differences of whether they should resign or not and which ones should resign. Definitely a big political controversy right now.
Okay, we actually have some sound from that on whether they should resign. Let's take a listen.
That the governor should resign.
Yes. I guess, yeah. A lot of people have been fired for less.
I understand the call for the resignation of the governor. I don't think he should resign yet.
So he should not resign?
No, I don't think so. Neither one of them.
The lieutenant governor's under accusations, too.
Yeah, the accusations against him are true, then he should resign as well.
Yeah, I feel like he should resign. Same with Justin Fairfax. There should be a zero-tolerance policy, like in Virginia, honestly.
From what I'm seeing, most people there are saying that they should, in fact, resign. Was that surprising to you at all to hear that?
Yeah, it took me back. And when I actually walked through with some of them, that would mean that the Republican Speaker of the House would become governor if all three ended up resigning. That also really surprised them. But look, with Lieutenant Governor Fairfax in particular, you know, a lot of conservatives, including myself, were talking about the presumption of innocence during the Kavanaugh hearings, and there should be no difference even, you know, when a lieutenant governor, Democrat governor goes through this. I think we should stop being a country that rushes to judgment. We saw this in the last couple of weeks in many different media stories, but with voters of Virginia, they almost have no direction to go. There's no real tangible way to move forward when your top three elected office holders are all under serious accusations like this. There's not a consensus of exactly how to proceed.
Charlie, just quickly, we had two very distinct issues here. We have accusations of sexual assault, accusations of rape, and then we also have the issue of blackface. Any big difference in terms of how people on the street responded separately to those two issues? More outraged by either? Any big difference you noted?
Oh, with the lieutenant governor, definitely more outrage behind what he is accused of doing, and those are crimes that could still be prosecuted. And there are now multiple accusations. I remember when I went out there, that was before the second accusation came forward. But this is a big political crisis, and it doesn't seem like there's a big path forward, an agreeable path forward of how to proceed.
We got to head out, but thank you so much for your input, Charlie. All right, Democrats going wild with investigations, but are more investigations really what the American people want? Andy McCarthy, he's coming.
Welcome back. Couple of quick headlines for you. Construction on a new border barrier is set to begin in just days in Texas. Crews preparing to break ground on 6 miles of new wall in the Rio Grande Valley this week. Congress greenlighted $600 million for 33 miles of wall in the area last year, where when you talk to agents down there, they say they really want it and need it. And roughly 200 illegal immigrants were arrested in ICE raids across North Carolina this week. Officials say 90 of them either have criminal convictions or pending criminal charges. Another 50 of those arrested were previously deported, but re-entered the U.S. illegally. Ed.
All right, thanks, Pete. With the Democrats now in power in the House, they are launching a whole series of investigations into everything from the president's finances to, yes, expanding the Russia probe.
The American people have a right to know, indeed have a need to know, that their president is acting on their behalf. That pertains to any credible allegations of leverage by the Russians or the Saudis or anyone else.
Any candidate for this office should be required by law to make their tax return available to the public.
They want to know the truth. They want to know the facts. And he has nothing to hide.
So, do the American people really want this, is the question. Here to react is Fox News contributor, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, Andy McCarthy. Good morning, Andy.
Morning, Ed.
So what's your sense? I mean, both parties engage in this. One side in power will say this is legitimate oversight. I mean, the Republicans wanted to investigate Benghazi and all of the rest in the Obama years. On the other hand, sometimes it's just a power grab. Sometimes it's nuisance. And sometimes it's all about 2020 politics and rallying your base.
Yeah, I'm going to go with choice last, Ed. You know, I was thinking about this when you guys were speaking at the top of the program, and it seems to me that the disconnect here is that we keep wondering, is the public going to be supportive of this? But I think in the 2020 election year, the segment of the public that's most important to the Democrats for the next 18 months or so is that portion of the Democratic base that's most influential in determining who the nominee will ultimately be. And I don't know that that faction of the Democratic base is representative of the broader country. So I think even though the broader country probably doesn't want to have nothing but investigations of the president, they probably just want to know, look, is there probable cause that this guy committed a felony? If there's not, let's move on and, you know, get to the business of the country. But there's this faction that's very influential to this 2020 process that's very, very interested in Donald Trump.
And it's a faction that some would say has Trump derangement syndrome. It may be driving some of the 2020 candidates further and further to the left. And the president tried to call it out this week in the State of the Union. Watch.
An economic miracle is taking place in the United States, and the only thing that can stop it are foolish wars, politics, or ridiculous partisan investigations.
Now, the Democrats immediately, Andy, said, oh, he's trying to intimidate us into not investigating, when in fact the president said, look, I'm more about not having you harass me. And I found it interesting that shortly after the president made that statement, you had the Republican chairman of the Senate Intel Committee say, after 2 years, we haven't found any collusion.
Yeah, well, I think he's setting up the table for 2022, Ed. In other words, they want to get into the nitty-gritty of these investigations. And part of the reason they have so much to play with is the original sin of this investigation is that it wasn't a criminal investigation to start with. It wasn't triggered by solid evidence of a crime. So it's a sprawl and it's all over the place. And I think the president, wisely in my view, is going to try to set up the situation where it's on his side, here I am trying to do the business of the country, and we have all these important things to do, and they look like they're scurrying around looking under every rock for something under circumstances where for 2 years, real investigators have been looking for something, and so far they haven't got anything.
And Democrats promised in the midterms they were running on the economy and health care and all these kitchen table issues. And to your point, now they're scurrying around in all kinds of investigations. Andy McCarthy, appreciate you coming in.
Thanks so much, Ed.
All right. Now, remember Nancy Pelosi's clap at the State of the Union that went viral? It's now getting a star-studded backing, yes, of course, in Hollywood. We'll tell you about that. And Cory Booker taking his support for the Green New Deal to a whole new level.
The planet has been in peril in the past. Who came forward to save Earth from the scourge of Nazi totalitarian regimes? We came forward.
Stuart Varney is here live to react. He might have to go to the moon and back to give us his insight.
Stuart Varney, you said, who's that? You know Phil Collins.
No, I just didn't recognize the voice.
Listen, he danced his way in. That's all that counts.
I did not.
A little. I saw a little movement there.
He always brings energy to the couch. We're glad you're here.
So what do you want to hear about today? The march. I want to do the march to socialism.
Do you want to?
I really do.
Okay, let's start with part of the march to socialism, which is that Green New Deal, which you wore a green tie on your show yesterday, not in solidarity.
You're killing me.
I know. This is Democratic hopeful Cory Booker on the Green Deal.
Yeah,
Watch.
look at this.
Our planet is in peril, and we need to be bold. There's a lot of people now that are blowing back on the Green Deal. They're like, oh, it's impractical. Oh, it's too expensive. Oh, it's all of this. If we used to govern our dreams that way, we would have never gone to the moon. God, that's impractical. You see that ball in the sky? That's impractical. And the planet has been in peril in the past. Who came forward to save Earth from the scourge of Nazi totalitarian regimes? We came forward. Our history is standing up and saying, look, humanity is in crisis. America is going to be light and the hope.
he came forward.
So what do you want to know?
Take it away.
Take it away.
I think that's the end point of this march to socialism. First, we had these proposals for huge increases in income tax, estate tax, social security tax, wealth tax. Huge increases. That's bottom line socialism. Then came the demand for Medicare for all, which is a form of socialism because you're going to get rid of 150 million Americans' private health insurance. Then comes the Green New Deal, which is radical environmental socialism. We're on that march further and further to the left till you end up where Senator Booker is right there, which is really hard to take. I mean, he obviously believes that the world is going to come to an end in 12 years' time, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez insists. He agrees with her, therefore we must take this drastic action of revolutionizing our entire society. I don't think you can sell that.
See, here's the problem, though, Stuart. It all sounds really good. It sounds guarantees for everyone. Everything is free. Oh, it appeals to a lot of people. It appeals to a lot of people saying, oh, wait, they're looking out for me. Why is this? Explain to people, though, why is this dangerous? What's to be learned from other countries who have followed that path and seen a whole bunch of failure come along with it?
Good one. I'm an Englishman, born and raised in England.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. I'm an American citizen. I'm an exile, a refugee from socialism. In the 1970s, that's when I left England, coal, steel, gas, all healthcare, most car production, electricity, airlines, trains, all run and owned by the government. And they ran them all into the ground. The economy of England virtually collapsed by the late 1970s. It took Margaret Thatcher, capitalist, to come on in, sweep it clean, and return to prosperity. I see us in America marching down exactly the same road, the socialist road, which is based upon a power grab. We want power over you. It's a money grab. We want your money. I think it's dangerous because it drives the economy into the dirt, and frankly, I think it's un-American. Now, that might sound strange coming from a guy with a British accent, but it is un-American. America was not made prosperous and dynamic by socialism. It was capitalism, free market capitalism, under our Constitution that created the wealth and prosperity which we enjoy today. Don't go down that road, please, I beg you. Now, sorry, I'm on a roll here. I'm on a roll.
Don't stop.
When President Trump, at the State of the Union message, said, America will never be a socialist country, I stood up and cheered. I'm right behind him on that one. And I think most Americans really are too.
And are they providing him an incredible opening? We've got 30 seconds.
Absolutely.
For 2020, because they're going so far out left that he can kind of run a little more middle course.
Can you really sell this to America? Massive taxation, revolution in energy.
I hope not, but our young people, I'm worried about the young people. They've never been taught about capitalism on their college campuses.
Okay, but young people are not going to decide this election. Middle America decides this coming election, and I don't think Middle America will buy this. They decided the last one. It is nonsense, and it's dangerous, and I don't think they'll buy it.
All right, Stuart Varney.
I hope
don't miss him. Fox Business.
Thanks for your passion.
Varney and the company, 9 to noon weekly, and then you came in on a Saturday. You want to come in tomorrow?
I'll be right here, Pete.
Oh, you heard it. Oh, okay, you get one day off. One day off.
All right, we are going to turn to some headlines for you. New York's new abortion law saves an accused murderer from an abortion charge in the deadly stabbing of his pregnant girlfriend. According to the New York Post, Anthony Hobson's second-degree abortion charge is now dropped after Governor Andrew Cuomo removed abortion from the state's criminal code and instead classifies it as a public health law. Hobson is charged with murder, accused of killing his girlfriend and their unborn child in their New York apartment. Cuomo's office isn't commenting on the murder case. Amazon is thinking twice about investing billions in the Big Apple. The online retail giant now reconsidering plans to build a second headquarters in New York City, according to the Washington Post. There are no reported plans to abandon the deal yet, but the company is facing a wave of opposition from local lawmakers, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. A brother and sister sent to play outside are now credited with saving a life. The two kids alerting their mother to a neighbor pinned underneath a car after hearing his desperate cries in Oklahoma.
We were playing a game and we heard him yelling for help.
They came running in, just screaming and yelling. The neighbor broke his arms, just a complete total miracle.
Wow. Their mother says the only reason they were outside was because they were misbehaving and had their electronics taken away. The man, he's expected to make a full recovery. Remember Nancy Pelosi's sarcastic applause during President Trump's State of the Union address? Well, now she's clapping it up with Hollywood elite at a star-studded gala in Los Angeles. The California Democrat mocking the president with Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom. She previously said the clap was not meant to be sarcastic. Oh, so typical,
So it
though.
was
It's
sarcastic.
surprising to everyone. You make fun of the president, you go to a Hollywood gala. It's boring. It's predictable.
That's exactly
boring.
right. It's boring.
And it's out of touch, and it's why you lose elections, because people can't stand that stuff.
We
That's
can-
why Trump won. That.
At least you can say that Rick is never boring.
That is true.
Guys, I wish that I could take the camera right now because we got a battle going on between these Kansas City and our camera guy who is
Keith.
Keith, no, who your Patriots.
Oh, the Patriots.
Yeah, so we've got a Patriots. Yeah, so it's getting rough out here. I mean, and it's all over. So we'll save this for a year. All right, let's talk some weather out there. It is cold out here, and it's really cold again across the far northern plains. Minus 34 actual air temperature in International Falls this morning. 13 in Kansas City. There you go. It's a little bit better here in New York right now. 24, so you got about 11 degrees better than your friends back home. A little bit of precipitation down across parts of the south. A little bit of freezing rain. Be careful on the roads this morning. Not going to be a major problem. We do have major problems, however, across the Pacific Northwest. Big snow moving in. In fact, probably record-breaking snow around the Seattle area, down towards Portland throughout the week. This is where the precipitation is going to fall. Pretty much everybody getting in on the act. But the big story to start is going to be all this precipitation in across the Pacific Northwest. We've got avalanche warnings. We have blizzard warnings in effect. Yesterday, we saw over 6 inches in Seattle itself, and the snow continues to fall. And it's going to stay cold, so the snow's not going anywhere very quickly. All right. Well, thank you for playing along. Guys, send it back to you inside.
All right. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, the Washington Post now drawing attention to the high rate of veteran suicides at VA facilities. So what changes need to be made to help our heroes? Joey Jones lost his leg serving overseas. Why he says the VA is still ill-equipped to handle mental health, coming up next.
Plus, it's a community that was the site of a massive fentanyl bust, and it knows it's a pathway for illegal drugs to get to the rest of the Northeast. So why will Elizabeth Warren celebrate in that very town, Lawrence, Massachusetts, today? A potentially epic fail coming up.
Another.
An important new Washington Post story highlighting the challenges veterans still face when seeking help from the VA, especially when it comes to mental health and preventing suicide. 19 veterans that according to their stats, took their own lives on VA campuses, mostly in parking lots, between October 2017 and November 2018. So what does this tell us about the importance of the VA reform the Trump administration is working on that gives our veterans a choice in their care? Joining us now, retired U.S. Bomb Corps technician who lost both his legs in a bomb blast in Afghanistan, Joey Jones. So, Joey, I have a personal connection to this. I know you do as well. I hear of people that we know who run up against the bureaucracy at the VA, and unfortunately, they take their own lives in the process. Talk to us about this.
Well, this is something that touches near and dear to my heart. I carry 24 veterans on my wrist, 24 veterans that died in combat. Quite honestly, it makes a lot of sense. That's what we go to combat, we risk our lives, and sometimes we lose. And that's part of it. I can deal with that. But it's my best friend from back home, a guy I grew up with. His dad's a Desert Storm vet. He was our football coach. He came back home in 2008, got addicted to painkillers and self-medicate from some of the experiences. In 2012, with no other option, he decided to take his own life. He thought that was the only way to quit inflicting pain on his family. When you look back at what we were going through, myself, our other best friend Keith, and his family, we were writing affidavits to have him put into detox facilities. We were doing everything we could. And the VA told him they didn't have any room or any funding for inpatient treatment. And he knew that just going to Narcotics Anonymous wasn't enough. And he decided to take his own life. I've got a voicemail he left me 5 days before he took his own life. And it haunts me today. And what it highlights is that the bureaucracy at the VA is so frustrating and sometimes so adversarial that we feel like we don't have anywhere left to turn.
Joey, I On an ongoing basis, I hear this story from folks who are helping vets try to get access to the VA, and they still don't. Inside that institutional bureaucracy, there seems to be no connection to the urgency. What is it about choice, the ability for a veteran to get private care, that you think is an important part of this solution?
Well, it's actually quite simple. At a VA facility, they don't have to compete for our business. They don't need to know our name, our interests, what we're up to, the big things happening in our life. If we stop coming, that's less workload, and they feel like we don't have anywhere else to go, and for many of us, we don't. So the fact they don't have to compete for our business means they're not achieving a certain quality. They're achieving adequacy at best, or mediocrity. And it's not to beat up on everyone that works at the VA, but when it comes to the culture of the VA and how these health facilities are ran, I was just at the one in Atlanta a few weeks ago. I spent 2 hours driving around the parking lot, looking for someone to park to go in 5 minutes and pick up a prescription, and I got nothing but attitude from the people working in the parking lot. But that's the norm. That's not an exception. That's just how it works. And so they're overran. And most of the things that we go to the VA for, we could go to someone that lives in our community, knows what